Welcome back to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie Crochet, and today I'm sharing with you how to make your very own love heart cushion. So if you're ready to stitch up something that's cute and cozy, this is the cushion pattern for you. Now I'm going to be using some new to me wool today, which is this Wendy with wool. This yarn is classed as super chunky. As you can see, it's nice and thick, and it would be equivalent to a size 6 yarn in the US. The recommended hook size is a 10mm hook, but I am going down to an 8mm hook. I think this is an 8mm. Just to make that out. It's one of my Furls ones. Now this yarn I have purchased using my staff discount from work. I work at Hobbycraft, so just need to clarify that I have got this at my staff discount price. But this is really a very well priced range of acrylic and non-acrylic yarns that they're now stocking. If you haven't used this yarn before, I hadn't until I made my sample. I find it really surprising, really good quality, really easy to work with. So it's definitely worth checking out. They have quite a wide range of colours in store, which is quite rare. And it's stocked in a lot of different big yarn stockists as well. I'll pop a few links below for you in the description box if you want to get your hands on this particular wool. Because as you can see, it has almost a bit of a slight sheen to it, and it's a 25 to 75% mix. So it's 25% wool, 75% premium acrylic, which is why it's got that slight sheen to it. And as you can see, so I hope you can see, it's not very fuzzy. Whereas some yarns, when they're blended with wool, tend to have that kind of hairy looking fuzz to it, which doesn't really agree with my texture thing. But it's not super soft, let's be honest, it's got wool in it, but it is definitely some of the squishiest yarn I've used. So as I've mentioned, it does have a recommended hook size of a 10mm. So if you're looking for a substitute yarn, look for the hook size when it comes to working with bulky weight yarns, because some things are listed as super chunky that aren't quite as chunky as others. So I always gauge it by the hook size that's recommended. So the yarn amount that you're going to need in total is 200 meters of super chunky size 6 yarn. So I have 2 balls of my main color. This is shade Petal 5204. So I have 2 of those. They are the same lot number, of course. So I've got 2 of those as my main color, and then I'm going to be joining with a contrast color, which is Pearl. So 5200. Again, this actually feels softer than this lovely kind of lilac-y purple colour, but I think they're a really great combination together, and I want my join to stand out, so I'm working that in a contrast colour. I am going to be using this 8mm hook from Furls. It's a resin hook, one of my favourites. I can't remember, I think this might be Virgo, it might be something else, who knows. And of course you're going to need a darning needle with a big enough eye to fit your wool through, because we are going to have to weave some ends in as we go. As I've mentioned, I'm going to be using an 8mm crochet hook, which is ever so slightly smaller. Well, it's 2mm smaller than the recommended hook size, and that's going to help keep our stitches nice and tight so that our stuffing won't show through. I can't find a cushion that fits inside, so I'm going to be using polyfill to fill my cushion. And when I made my sample, I used about 200 grams, which is half of a big bag of polyfill that you can get in the UK. I will let you know that this polyfill has been gifted, because this pattern's going to go on display in my store. So I purchased the yarn, but they have gifted some polyfill for me to use to display this one in store and get it nice and stuffed. Let's gather all of our materials and let's get started. So we are going to make 2 panels, and then we're going to join those together to make this cushion. And those panels are made up of 4 parts. We're going to start by making the lower part of the heart. We're then going to make the right hand side, then the left hand side of the top of the heart, and then finally we're going to join those 2 panels when we've made them together using US single crochet. We're going to start by making a slip knot and placing that onto our hook. And we start with a massive starting chain of 2. So we're simply going to yarn over, bring our hook through 2 times. That took a long time, right? We're then going to work 2 US half double crochets into that second chain from hook. So a US half double crochet is the same as a UK half treble crochet. We're going to start by yarning over the hook We're inserting it into that second chain. We yarn over and we bring up a third loop. We yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook. So that was number 1. We're going to yarn over and work a second half double crochet into the same chain. So at the end of row 1, we have 2 half double crochets. We're going to make a turning chain of just 1, which does not count as a stitch, ready to continue to work into these 2 stitches for row 2. So that chain 1 does not count. We're going to yarn over and work into that first stitch, working 2 half double crochets. So that's number 1, and then we're reinserting for number 2, and then we're working 2 half double crochets into that next stitch as well. So we yarn over, insert for number 1, picked up too much there. There we are. Bring our loop up, pull through all 3, and we yarn over, insert for number 2. So at the end of row 2, we have 4 half double crochets. For row 3, we're going to make a chain of 1 and repeat row 2, working 2 half double crochets into each stitch across. So remembering that chain 1 does not count, we're yarning over, inserting into our first stitch, working 2 half double crochets, and that's 1 and 2, and we're working 2 half double crochets into each stitch across. So we're working 2 more into our second stitch, that's 1, and reinsert for number 2, and we're working 2 more into the next, and 2, and then we work 2 half double crochets into that last stitch, that's 1 and 2. So at the end of row 3, we have 8 stitches. So this is our chain 1 that we started with. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Going into row 4, we start with a chain of 1, we're turning our work, and we're working 1 half double crochet into our first stitch. Oops. And we are then going to work 2 half double crochets into the next. So that's 1 and 2. This is considered an internal increase because it's not worked into that first stitch at the side, and the reason behind that is when we're joining them, we're going to work into these row ends, and it's just going to help reduce the holes at the side of our projects. So we've worked 1 half double crochet into the first stitch, 2 half double crochets into the next. We're then going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across to our last 2 stitches. So we're working 1 half double crochet into the next, that's 1 half double crochet into the next again, and again, and again. So that's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We should have 2 stitches remaining. We're going to work 2 half double crochets into that next stitch. So that's 1, yarn over and insert for number 2. And then into our final stitch, you can just see that chain 1 there. The stitch has probably slipped down the side a little bit. We're going to work 1 half double crochet. So at the end of row 4, you should have 10 half double crochets. There's that starting chain 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Going into row 5, we begin with a chain of 1. We are working 1 half double crochet into the same stitch as our chain 1. And we're then going to work 2 half double crochets into each of the next 2 stitches. So we work 1, reinsert for number 2 into that next stitch, repeating that again into the next stitch, working number 1 and number 2. So we've worked 3 stitches, but we now have 5. We've worked into 3, we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across to our last 3 stitches. So that's 1 half double crochet into the next, half double crochet into the next again, oops, and once again, so that we have 3 stitches remaining. There's that chain 1 again, 1, 2 and 3. We're going to work 2 half double crochets into each of the next 2 stitches. So that's 1 and 2 into that next stitch, and then we're working 2 half double crochets into the next, and that's number 2. We're going to end by working 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. It looks more like a fan than a heart right now. So at the end of row 5, you should have 14 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14. So for rows 6 through to 11, we're going to be working a repeat of row 4. We're going to work row 6 together, which is a repeat of row 4. We begin with a chain of 1, and we're going to work 1 half double crochet into that first stitch, followed by 2 half double crochets into the next. That's 1 and 2. We're then going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across to our last 2 stitches. And when we have just those last 2 stitches remaining, we're working 2 half double crochets into the next. That's number 2. And then we end by working 1 final half double crochet into that last stitch. So your stitch count in row 6 will have increased by 2. So we should now have a stitch count of 16 half double crochets. Now you're going to repeat row 4 for rows 7 through to 11, and your stitch count will increase by 2 after each row, and at the end of row 11 you should have a stitch count of 26 half double crochets. So you can either use the timestamp below and repeat row 6, remembering that your stitch count will increase by 2 after each row, and I'll meet you at the end of row 11. So once you've completed row 11, you should have a total of 26 half double crochets. Going into row 12, we start with a chain of 1. And for row 12, we are simply working 1 half double crochet into each stitch across. So continue across, working 1 half double crochet into each stitch. Your stitch count will remain the same, and at the end of row 12, you should still have a stitch count of 26 half double crochets. So at the end of row 12, you should still have your stitch count of 26 half double crochets. We're going to go straight into row 13, beginning with our turning chain of 1, and we're repeating row 4 again, working 1 half double crochet into the same stitch as our chain 1, then going to work 2 half double crochets into the next. That's 1 and 2. We're then going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across until we have just 2 stitches remaining. So continue across to your last 2 stitches and I will meet you there. When you have just 2 stitches remaining, we're going to work 2 half double crochets into the next and 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. At the end of row 13, you should now have a stitch count of 28 half double crochets. So for rows 14 to 17, we're going to be repeating rows 12 to 13. So for the next row, we would work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across. Then for row 15, we're repeating row 13. So we work that internal increase on each side. And then we repeat that again. So our stitch count by the end of row 17 will be 32 half double crochets. As always, you can use the timestamps below in the description box to work row 12 and 13 2 more times, which will take you to a total row count of 17. So go on to work row 14 to 17, repeating rows 12 to 13, and I'll meet you when you have those 32 half double crochets, and then we'll work those last 2 rows of the lower part of our hearts. Just had to give my panel a bit of a pull about to make sure that it's still laid flat. So if you have to do the same for yours, don't worry. It's because of all these increases that it will cause it to tighten up on the edges. So at the end of row 17, you should now have a total stitch count of 32 half double crochets. So for rows 18 and 19, we are going to be repeating row 12. So we're making our turning chain of 1, and we're working 1 half double crochet into each stitch across, so that we're maintaining that stitch count of 32 half double crochets for 2 rows. So work rows 18 and 19, and then we're going to work the right side of the top of our heart. So work rows 18 and 19, make sure you still have a stitch count of 32, and I'll see you ready to work the first part of the top of our heart. Straightening out once again. At the end, oh, I can't even fit it on screen anymore. At the end of row 19, you should still have a stitch count of 32 half double crochets, and we're going to continue on to work the right side of our heart. If you're left-handed, you'll probably be making your left side first, followed by your right side. So the instructions remain the same. Continue on working on the side that you're on. There's no right or wrong side of this cushion, so it's not going to have an impact whether you're following left or right. You don't need to reattach, don't worry. So the first side of our heart, we're going to start by making a chain of 1. We are then going to work 1 half double crochet into the same as our chain 1, and then work 1 half double crochet into the next 15. So we've worked into the same as our chain 1, and now we're working a further 1 half double crochet into each of the next 15. That's 2, 3, 4, 13, 14, and 15. So in total, we should have worked 16 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. We're going to leave the remaining 16 stitches of this row unworked. So this is now row 1 of the top of our heart. We're going to make a turning chain of 1, leaving those stitches unworked. We're going to continue to work across these stitches here. For row 2, we're going to work 1 half double crochet into the same as our chain 1. I've just split that yarn. And we're working 1 half double crochet into each stitch across. So we should still have a stitch count of 16 half double crochets. In row 3, we're going to make a turning chain of 1. And in this row, we are going to start decreasing to bring in the top of our heart. So we start by making a half double crochet in the same as our chain 1, and then we're going to work a half double crochet 2 together across the next 2 stitches. So we yarn over, insert our hook into the next stitch, yarn over to bring up our 3rd loop. We yarn over, insert into the next stitch, yarn over to bring up a 5th loop, yarn over, pull through all 5 loops, and that reduces that stitch count from 2 down to 1. We're then going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across until just 3 stitches remain. When we have just those last 3 stitches, we are going to work a half double crochet 2 together across the next 2. So we yarn over, insert, bring our loop up, yarn over, insert into the next, bring up our next loop. So we have 5 loops on our hook. We yarn over and pull through all 5 loops, and then we're just going to work a final half double crochet into that last stitch. So at the end of row 3, we'll have decreased 2 stitches, making our stitch count down to 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So for rows 4 and 5 of our top of our heart, we're going to repeat row 2, where we make our turning chain of 1, working a half double crochet into the same as our chain 1, and then working 1 half double crochet into each stitch across. So we're doing that for 2 rows, for rows 4 and 5. So repeat that row 2 for 2 times, and I'll meet you at the end of row 5, and your stitch count should still be 14 half double crochets. You should start to see a very slight curve at the top of your heart here. And after row 5, we are going to go straight into row 6. We are working a repeat of row 3. We're going to do this one together, just so you're happy with your decreased stitches. I've made my turning chain of 1. And we're going to start by working 1 half double crochet into the same stitch as our chain 1. And we are then going to work a half double crochet 2 together across those next 2 stitches. So we yarn over, insert, bring up a loop, yarn over, insert into the next stitch, bring up a 5th loop. We're going to yarn over, pull through all 5, and then work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across until just 3 stitches remain. Check how many we've got left there. So I have just 3 stitches remaining, and we're going to work another half double crochet 2 together across the next 2 stitches. We yarn over, insert into the next, yarn over, insert into the next, bring up that 5th loop, yarn over, pull through all 5 loops, and we finish row 6 working 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. So our stitch count after row 6 will be 12 half double crochets. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. For row 7, we are repeating row 3 again. So we start with our chain of 1, work a half double crochet into that same stitch as our chain 1. We then work that half double crochet 2 together over the next 2 stitches. Make sure you've got 5 loops on your hook, pull through all 5. Then work a half double crochet into each stitch until you have just 3 stitches remaining. When you have just 3 stitches remaining, we're going to work another half double crochet 2 together across the next 2 stitches, pull through all 5, working a final half double crochet into that last stitch. So once again, our stitch count has decreased again by 2, and we're now down to just 10 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Can't really see from this angle, but our heart is coming in at the sides here to create that nice shape at the top of our heart. Going into row 8, we start with a chain of 1. We work a half double crochet into the same as our chain 1. We are then going to work a half double crochet 2 together across the next 2 stitches. There we are. We work a half double crochet into the next. We then work another half double crochet over the next 2 stitches to reduce that stitch count again, followed by a half double crochet into the next. I'm going to repeat that for a final time, working a half double crochet 2 together over the next 2 stitches and ending with a final half double crochet in the last. Now this row has worked 3 decreased stitches, so we now only have 7 stitches remaining. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So for row 9, we're going to create a bit of a curve to the top of our heart. We start by working a single crochet, the same as a UK double crochet, into the same as our chain 1. So bring up those loops and pull through 2. We then work a half double crochet into the next, so we yarn over, insert, bring our loop up and pull through all 3. We're then going to work a US double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So we yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over, bring a loop up. This time we're yarning over and just pulling through those first 2 loops before we yarn over and pull through the last 2. So that was number 1. We yarn over, insert into the next to work our second. Bring your 3rd loop up, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2. I'm going to do that for a 3rd and final time, yarning over, bringing up that 3rd loop, pull through 2, pull through 2. We're then going to work a US half double crochet into the next stitch before ending this row by working a US single crochet or a UK double crochet into that last stitch. It just gives us a slight curve for when we're going to join our sides together. Once we've worked row 9, we're going to fasten off and continue on, but I'm going to slip stitch where the bottom of that last single crochet is, just by inserting my hook at the base of that stitch, bringing a loop through, straight through the loop on my hook, and then I'm going to grab my scissors to fasten off, and I leave enough of a tail to weave in those ends in a moment. And the reason I've done that is it will allow me to really create a nicer finish when we join our 2 panels together. So to work the other side of our heart, we are simply going to pick it up with the right side facing, so you're almost continuing on with those stitches we didn't work. It should be facing this side because we're going to be working in that direction. If we flip this over and work from this side, it's going to cause the rows to look different, whereas we're going to continue on working this row here because that's where we did our first turn. So we're going to just insert our hook into that first unworked stitch of row 19 that we didn't finish off. Just going to grab my yarn and place it over with the tail at the back, and I'm simply going to bring it through that unworked stitch, grab my working yarn and make a chain of 1 just to hold it into position for a moment. We can then continue to work across the remaining stitches of row 19. We're going to start by working a half double crochet into the same stitch that we just joined into, and we're going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch across. I'm going to work over my tail at the same time, so we're just working our half double crochets into each of the unworked stitches all the way back across. We should have a stitch count of 16 from where we've just joined. Just working my final stitch at the end of that row, so we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 half double crochets from where we rejoined our yarn, and we haven't skipped any stitches, just we've got that post in the middle to give us a bit of separation. Now for rows 2 to 9, for this side of our heart, we are simply going to repeat exactly what we did over on this side. So you can go and use the timestamps from row 2 of the top of your heart. I've made that very bold in the timestamps for you. You're repeating rows 2 to 9 all the way up to fasten off. You'll be fastening off on the other side this time. So repeat rows 2 to 9 of your other side of your heart, and then I'll meet you in a moment to fasten off and continue on to joining. So I've just worked my final single crochet in the top of row 9, just slip stitching to the base of that single crochet, ready to fasten off. And then we have the first panel of our heart completed. I do like how this all comes in at the top. It probably looks a bit strange because obviously it's not completely curved, but we need to make a second of these panels so we can join them together. And then, so go ahead and repeat from all the way back from the beginning of your heart to make your second panel. And as soon as you've done that, come back. We're going to join our panels. Have your stuffing ready because we're going to be stuffing once we reach our join up to here, so we can make sure we get the shape that we want for our finished heart. So go ahead and make your second panel and I will see you shortly. Once you have completed both of your panels and you have them, the next thing that I'd recommend doing if you have a few moments to spare is to take the time and match up your beginning stitches. You don't have to do this. This is just something that's going to make it a bit easier to join. So I'm just going to match up some of the stitches. Doesn't matter which side you put on together. I'm just going to match up the top corner on each side, just so I know where my stitches are. That's going to help us when we are joining all the way around our project, just a little bit, keeping everything lined up. So once you have your panels together, we're going to be continuing with our main colour, and we'll just be inserting our hook through where those slip knots were. I'm going to grab my main colour and just place that over my hook. And we're going to work the first row of our join in the same colour as our cushion. We're going to make a little chain one just to secure it, and then we're going to be working into our row ends, working one single crochet. We're going to start by working our first one back into where we've just joined these panels together. They're now attached. I'm going to tuck my ends in so they're not in the way, and then we're going to be working into our row ends. Now I've secured my first stitches at the top of my heart, just so I know that when I'm working into my row ends, I'm not misplacing them on either side of my panel. Just take a moment to identify your first row end. We've worked one single crochet there, and then we're just going to be working into the same row end on the panel behind, making a single crochet, tuck all those ends in, and then we're working into the end of each row. If you're unsure, you can have a look to see where you've worked, and then we work into the next one. If you really are struggling to see your row ends, you can take a moment just to follow the row around, and if you need to, you can place a stitch marker in each row end, joining them. So we have, this is our next row, and there's the row end. This is easier when you're doing this on your lap because you can easily see both rows. So this is our next row to work into. Just go through both panels and work a single crochet to join them together. Here's our next row. We can go through the stitch on each side of our panel. There's our next row here. We've already worked for this one, so this is the next one. Just take your time joining. This is the bit that people don't enjoy, and it's usually because we rush wanting to get our projects finished, but it really is worth taking the time to add in these joins, making sure we're working through both panels. So this row is where obviously we've turned. I think the most challenging thing for me is making sure I'm going into the right point on the other panel, because we don't want to end up with too many stitches, and that's why I've placed that stitch marker at the top, so I can just readjust and make sure they're all lining up. So that's that row. We're on to this row here. You can see we're not causing it to gather too much. We're just working into each row end, and it will help straighten out where we're working. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've done 8 so far. And we're just carrying on, making sure we've worked into each row. I'm not going to go just keep blindly going. I'm checking that I have the same number of rows left on each side of my cushion. So we're just going to keep repeating this all the way up, placing one single crochet into each row end, all the way up to that first stitch of that final row of the top of the heart on both sides of our heart. So I've worked into each row end, and I'm just at my first stitch marker, and then we're going to work one single crochet into each stitch across the top of row 9 from the top of our hearts. So by not working any additional chains or stitches, it's just going to give us a nice curve at the top of our heart. I'm just going to continue working across each stitch to where we slip stitched the ends of our panels. So this is my last stitch of row 9 of my heart. And then I'm going to work where we slip stitched on both sides of my panel. And then we're going to continue working down the row ends of the top of our hearts, working down in this formation. Just tucking my ends in because they're already secured. So this is the end of that row. We're going down to this row here, and continuing to work all the way down to here. I've worked into the end of this row here. I don't want to create any extra bulk at the side here where we split for our stitches. So instead of working at the bottom of this row here, we're going to go through this kind of non-middle stitch between the two hearts. So we've worked into the end of this row. We're not going to work into the bottom. We're going into this kind of middle stitch. That just makes sure there's no holes for our stuffing to come out of. And then we're going to continue back up to where I've placed my next stitch marker, but where those stitches start again. Just working into the end of each row. So we've reached the kind of side here, which would have been, just need to work these last row end before those stitches start. You just want to check that everything looks nice and neat and even. And actually the whole side of this part of our heart is sealed. So I'm going to work across my next lot of stitches, and then I'm probably going to start stuffing this side of my cushion. Let's get that last stitch marker out. Again, they were completely optional. We didn't have to use them. Going to just tuck these ends in so they're out of my way, so I can see my stitches really neatly. Where's my actual working yarn gone? There. Just making sure I've picked up both of those first stitches from that last row that we worked. See, that's a chain one, is it? No, that's a stitch. And then just continuing working one single crochet into each stitch across, working through both sides. This is where we've slip stitched into the base of that final stitch. So I'm going to start going down the side of my heart again. Tuck my end in. I'm just going to make a little chain one so I can start my stuffing. I'm going to make sure that looks nice and rounded, the same as the other side. It does. Now I've already got a cloud of stuffing here ready, and I fluffed it out, making sure that everything's nice and separated. We don't have any big clumps. And I'm simply just going to shove it in over to this side of the heart. And I'm going to make sure that I'm happy with how this very top bit looks before I go any further. I want it puffed, but not too puffed that you see the stuffing through it too much, because obviously this is quite a light colour of yarn, so you can get a bit of sheen coming through from the stuffing. Just making sure that that's nice and stuffed. And then I'm just going to go a little bit further in down this side here, and you can already see the wonderful shape it's going to create. I want it to be quite smooth, because obviously we're not putting a zip in this. You are welcome to, but I'm certainly not, because this yarn and this stuffing that I'm using is machine washable, and I want it to be squishy. That's a bit too soft. You just keep playing until you're happy with how squishy your cushion is and the shape that you're getting from your stuffing. I think that's looking pretty good on both sides. Got an end there. And then I can just continue on. I'm going to work down to about here. Then I can stuff this part and continue all the way back, working one single crochet into each of our row ends, all the way back to the beginning. And that's where I'm going to meet you. By that point, you should be completely stuffed. Not you, the cushion. Should be pretty much completely stuffed, so that you can have a good look at where it's all placed and make sure you're happy with the location of your stuffing. So we're just going to continue working down these row ends, making sure we're working through both sides of our cushion and joining them all together. And and then we can stuff this top and work down. Probably about here I'm going to stop and finish stuffing completely before I join. I've had to change positions a little bit because now I have a very, very full cushion, and I've just worked one more row end to work into before we are going to just make one more into where we joined, and then we're going to work a slip stitch into that first single crochet that we made, and you can either fasten off or change to your next colour. Now I'm changing to a contrasting colour, so I'm just going to grab my new colour, place that over my hook and slip stitch through, which counts as our first chain 1 of this round. We are simply going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. I'm working over my ends for a little bit before I will weave them in at the end. So we're just simply working 1 single crochet into each stitch around. It's going to be a bit awkward because of the size of our cushions. I love how this contrast colour sets the edging off. So we're going to continue all the way around, working 1 single crochet into each stitch around, and I will meet you when you're back here ready to fasten off. So I've worked all the way around. I'm just going to work into the base of that heart where we first joined, and then I'm going to slip stitch to join to that first single crochet we made. Ooh, it's not the time to split my yarn, and then we're ready to fasten off. Bring that through with my hook. Ooh. And there we have, well, I can't fit it on screen, it's too big. I'll insert a photo. So there we have our finished crochet heart cushion. I hope you are as happy as I am with mine, because it is squishy, it is soft, and I think because it's not pink, I like it a little bit more. Thank you as always for joining me. I will see you in the next video.